In Monster Hunter World, there are many aspects to consider when taking on a hunt. The target, your weapon, these are all important, but hunters who want optimal performance need to consider the build they use via the weapon and armour they wear. I'm Darcblade, and here are even more builds that I use for the dual blades. The skills that you can gain from armour and even some weapons can help shape your hunter into specialised hunting machines. With the dual blades, these lightning fast weapons often benefit from elemental and ailment effects, and this will be shown in the builds here. The dual blades are also an excellent source of damage, but I didn't want to put up 4 more DPS builds, so there's a bit of variety here. Now remember, these builds in Season 2 are aimed at end game builds, so they will feature a lot of gamma pieces of armour and some of the rarest jewels there are. So anyway, let's move on to our first build, which I call the Kjarr or Kjarr DPS build. This build utilises any of the weapons from Arch-Tempered Kulftaroth, the Kjarr or Kjarr weapons. These are normally some of the strongest element and ailment weapons in the game, thanks to them having critical status and critical element built in. So for this build, you'll need the Kaiser Crown Gamma, Empress Mel Beta, Kaiser Vambraces Gamma, the Empress Coil Gamma, and the Kaiser Greaves Gamma. I'm also using a Handicraft Charm 3, and for my weapon I'm using the Kjarr Daggers Dragon. Although, to be honest, you can use any of the Kjarr weapons you desire and they'll work just fine with this build. But depending which you use, you may need to change the augmentation. The Dragon Daggers allow for a health regen augmentation on it, as it already comes with high affinity. If you're using alternatives, you may need to consider a affinity increase augmentation on it instead. Anyway, as for the jewels, I'm focusing mainly on DPS jewels here, so I've gone for Tenderizer jewels to max out weakness exploit, Flawless Jewel to max out peak performance, Dragon Jewels to get as much dragon rating as we can with this weapon. The Kjarr weapons unfortunately only really allow for 2 jewels related to whatever element or ailment you are using. I'm then using a Vitality Jewel to max out our health boost. I'm also using a Slider Jewel to give us that affinity sliding skill, and that will leave you with 2 tier 1 jewel sockets left, to which you can use whatever you desire. For the purpose of this video, I went with Medicine Jewels to increase the amount of healing I do, but these are entirely optional. Anyway, if you've done what I've done here, you should have build with 150 health, 100 in stamina, but both of these will go up to 200. When you begin a hunt and take the relevant potions and consumables, you have 273 attack, which will be even higher with a peak performance, white sharpness, 50% affinity, this will actually be 100% so long as you're going for monster weak points, 270 dragon rating with average Elder Seal. You'll also have a decent defense, especially against fire and thunder, but you're fairly weak to water and ice. As for the skills, you'll have Critical Eye level 7, Critical Eye basically increases our affinity, Health Boost level 3, this increases the amount of health we have, Weakness Exploit level 3, this increases our affinity by a set percentage when going for a monster's weak point, so hitting a monster's weak point with Weakness Exploit at level 3 will grant you an extra 50% affinity, Handicraft level 3, increasing the sharpness rating of our weapon, Peak Performance level 3, increasing our attack once we have maximum health, Recovery Up level 2, this is thanks to the optional jewels I put in, increasing the amount of health we regain when we perform healing actions. Dragon Attack level 2, this increases the dragon rating of our weapons, but unfortunately we can only really go up to level 2. Evade Window level 2, this is a byproduct of the gear, but can still be useful as it increases the invulnerability period when we perform a dodge. Affinity Sliding level 1, which increases our affinity by 30% when we perform a slide, and with the dual blades having one of the best slide attacks in the game with the Heavenly Blade Dance, it's definitely useful. And then finally you'll have Critical Element, increasing the elemental damage of this build when we crit a monster. You'll also have the following set bonuses: Teostra's Technique, Master's Touch, preventing sharpness loss when we crit a monster, and Lunostra's Favour, Stamina Cap Up, increasing our maximum stamina. Now with this build having 100% affinity so long as you're going for monsters' weak points, you shouldn't really see any sharpness loss whatsoever, so you shouldn't have to sharpen. Unfortunately though, most of the sharp dual blades don't have white sharpness, so you need extra handicraft to boost that up to the white sharpness. Now you can, if you want, completely drop the dragon dual blades if you want for a different element or ailment, but if you do so, remember to replace the jewels. Also, in all honesty, you can use this build without having to use a Kjarr weapon. It works fine with pretty much anything, like fire and ice. Just remember to replace the jewels to match whatever element or ailment you are using. Also take into account a monster's weakness, and you should see very satisfying results with this build. Anyway, let's move on to the next build, which is the defensive build version 2.0. This build focuses on survivability and especially health regeneration, while at the same time being able to do a decent amount of DPS. So for this build you need the Empress Crown Gamma, the Valhasak Mel Gamma, the Valhasak Braces Beta, the Empress Coil Gamma, and the Valhasak Greaves Gamma. I'm also using an Attack Charm 3, and for my weapon I'm using the Empress Dagger's Ruin with a health regen augmentation on it. As for your jewels, a little bit of a mixed bag here. First I've gone for Tenderizer jewels to get that maximum weakness exploit. I've gone for an attack jewel to get attack boost to level 4, a vitality jewel to max out our health, expert jewels to boost up our affinity, a slider jewel for that affinity sliding, and a sharp jewel to provide us with the protective polish skill. Anyway, if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 150 health, 100 stamina, which is actually 200 health and 200 stamina once you've actually taken all of your consumables while on a hunt. You'll have 304 attack, which is actually more thanks to peak performance, white sharpness, 25% affinity, which is actually 75% thanks to weakness exploit. This can be even higher if you have affinity sliding activated. You'll have 60 blast rating with a strong defense, especially against water and thunder, but you're fairly weak to ice and dragon. As for the skills, you'll have critical eye level 5, attack boost level 4. Attack boost increases your attack as it suggests, but at level 4 it will also give you an extra 5% affinity. So when you're going for the attack boost skill, always try to get to level 4. Peak performance level 3, health boost level 3, weakness exploit level 3, evade window level 2, like I said it's a byproduct of the gear but can be helpful when dodging. Wide range level 2, again a byproduct of the gear but allows us, if we are playing in a group, for a portion of our consumables to be passed on to our allies. So for example, if you heal yourself, a portion of your healing will be passed on to your allies. Recovery up level 1, which increases the amount of health we regen through healing methods. Recovery speed level 1, which increases how quickly our health naturally regenerates. Affinity sliding level 1, protective polish level 1, which when after sharpening your weapon provides a coat over your sharpness gauge, preventing any sharpness loss for a small period of time. Hasten recovery level 1, which allows us to regenerate health when we're attacking a monster. And you'll have the following set bonuses: Valhasak's Vitality, Super Recovery, allowing our health to regenerate past the red portion of health, providing continuous healing over time. You'll also have Lunostra's Favour, Stamina Cap Up, increasing our maximum stamina. So this build focuses on health regen aspects, allowing you to, well, stay alive longer. Now it is by no means the absolute pinnacle of health regen builds, because recovery up and recovery speed are only at rank 1, but this combined with the Valhasak set bonus, haste recovery, and the health regen augmentation on our weapons still allows for speedy recovery when we're in combat. This means that you shouldn't have to sheathe your weapons to heal often, allowing you to stay in the fight for longer. It would have been nice to get a little bit of extra handicraft for this build, considering the weapons have only a small portion of white sharpness, but the protective polish should counter this. Just remember to sharpen your weapons before you actually start attacking a monster. You can drop some DPS elements of this build if you so desire. For example, you can max out both the recovery speed and recovery up by dropping some of the expert jewels in favour for the jewels to max out those skills. And you can even, if you so desire, drop the attack charm, again in favour of something more defensive. The choice is up to you. But for me personally, I found this build a nice balance between defense and offense, allowing you to bring down monsters quite comfortably. Anyway, let's move on to the next build, which is the free element ailment DPS build. This build focuses on weapons that have their ailment hidden. So for the purpose of this video, I'll be demonstrating the Troph Dagger's Poison. This build could be considered a little bit of a gimmicky build, but it works well with any weapon that has poison, blast, paralysis or sleep on them. So for this build you need the Zora Headgear Gamma, the Kieran Jacket Gamma, Zora Claws Gamma, the Zora Spine Gamma, and the Dante's Leather Boots Alpha. I'm also using a Handicraft Charm 3, and for my weapon I'm using the Troph Dagger's Poison with an affinity increase augmentation on them. As for the jewels, they're mainly focused on DPS, so I've gone for Venom jewels to max out the poison rating of this build, Tenderizer jewels to max out weakness exploit, a Release jewel to max out free element, which brings out the full potential of the poison rating of these weapons, expert jewels to add some affinity, and a sharp jewel to provide us with that protective polish skill. Anyway, if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 100 health, 100 stamina, 287 attack, with white sharpness, 35% affinity, which is actually 85 so long as you're going for monster weak points, with a poison rating of 410. You'll also have a very strong defense, especially against fire, but you're fairly weak to water and ice. As for the skills, you'll have Critical Eye level 6, Poison Attack level 3, which increases our poison rating onto the build, Free Element level 3, which brings out the full potential of weapons that have their element or ailment, in this case hidden, Weakness Exploit level 3, Handicraft level 3, Earplugs level 2, a byproduct of the gear but can help ignore weaker monsters' roars. Windproof level 2, again a byproduct but can help when dealing with monsters who utilise wind attacks. Bombardier level 2, again a byproduct of the gear. Unfortunately, a lot of the Zora Magdaros Gamma pieces do have skills that are just byproducts. But nonetheless, Bombardier can still also be useful as it increases the power of barrel bombs. You have Affinity Slide-In level 1, which potentially can boost our affinity up to 100%, so long as we'll go for monster weak points, and Protected Polish level 1. You'll also have the set bonuses Zora Magdaros Mastery, Critical Status, increasing the abnormal status effect damage when we land crits on a monster. So there we have it. This is a pretty straightforward DPS build that utilises ailments, especially on weapons that have the ailments hidden. Normally weapons that have their element, or in this case ailments hidden, their ratings are normally quite high. Now I went for the Taroth Dagger's Poison for the demonstration of this build, but it works just fine with the Blast, Sleep or Paralysis ailments. If you're going with Paralysis, this build can perform a pseudo DPS crowd controlling role. But I went for Poison for that constant sustained damage. However, remember that if you do swap out the weapons to change the Venom Jaws to match whatever ailment you are using. Also consider a monster's weaknesses to the various abnormal effects, because if you come up against a monster that is severely weak to one of these ailments, you're going to be in for a fun hunt. Anyway, let's move on to our fourth and final build, which is the Stamina Management build. This build is a little bit of a quirky build focused all around managing your stamina bar and being able to stay in demon mode for as long as possible. So for this build I'm using the Nergigante Helm Gamma, the Nergigante Mel Beta, Empress Vambraces Gamma, the Kirin Hoop Gamma, and the Empress Greaves Beta. I'm also using an Attack Charm 3, and for my weapon I'm using the Empress Dagger's Sticks. This has an affinity increase augmentation on it. As for your jewels, I first focused on jewels related to our various stamina related skills, so I've added a Sprinter jewel to max out Marathon Runner for more constitution, and then I've started focusing on DPS elements, so I've added Tenderizer jewels for weakness exploit, an attack jewel to get our attack boost to level 4, expert jewels to boost our affinity, a slider jewel to provide that affinity sliding, and finally a vitality jewel to max out our health. Anyway, if you've done what I've done here, you should have a build with 150 health, 100 stamina, which is actually 200 health and 200 stamina once you've taken consumables whilst on a hunt. You have 290 attack rating with white sharpness, with 31% affinity, which is actually 81% so long as you're going for monster weak points, with 120 blast rating, and you also have a decent defense, especially against fire, but you're fairly weak to ice and dragon. As for the skills, you have attack boost level 4, health boost level 3, Weakness Exploit level 3, Agitator level 3, a byproduct of the gear, but Agitator, when it kicks in, when a monster becomes enraged, it boosts our attack and affinity rating, potentially boosting our affinity to that 100% mark when we'll go for monster weak points. You'll also have Marathon Runner level 3, reducing the rate at which our stamina drains whilst in demon mode. You'll also have Constitution level 3, which reduces the stamina cost when we perform moves that use up a set amount of stamina. For example, when you dodge. You'll have Stamina Surge level 3, which increases the rate at which we recover our stamina, so after we exited demon mode and we're in normal or archdemon mode. Critical Eye level 2, boosting our affinity. Evade Extender level 1, increasing the distance at which we evade. Affinity Sliding level 1, and Razor Sharp level 1. Razor Sharp is thanks to the weapons we are using, which halves our sharpness loss. You also have the set bonuses Lunostra's Favour, Stamina Cap Up, increasing our maximum stamina. So as you can see, whilst this build is focused entirely around stamina management, it also has some DPS options. It also makes use of having maximum health as well. Now, whilst this may not be the highest damage build out there, the fact that you can stay in demon mode for a lot longer normally makes up for that. Just make sure you use dash juice with this build. Of course, as well, this build works pretty much with any weapon. You don't have to use the Empress Dagger's Sticks, but if you do switch them out, you may have to change around some of the jewels. It's surprising how fun this build can be. Not having to worry about your stamina and going in and out of demon mode, for me, makes this build quite enjoyable. And you're still able to bring monsters down fairly quickly as well. So there we have it. Those are some more builds that I like to use for the dual blades. Of course, Monster Hunter World is always being updated with new monsters and gear, which can potentially cause these builds to change and become even stronger, especially with Iceborne on the horizon. So if any major updates happen to any of these builds, I'll be sure to release an updated video. Remember also that almost any task in Monster Hunter World can be taken on with any weapon and gear set. You don't have to use what is shown in these videos. These are just the sets that I personally like to use. Anyway, I hope you found this video helpful or informative, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you even more builds that I use for the dual blades in Monster Hunter World. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.